Hey everyone, Christian here. We're going to talk about Emilia Perez today. Now to set some context for this, I watched Emilia Perez before I watched the film Wicked, and it was the movie I watched after watching Woman of the Hour. You can check out the review on that. And this is obviously basically a few weeks before the Oscars. Obviously I'm recording this after the Oscars have been announced for nominations. And I'm essentially, because I've been seeing the outcry, the criticism, I'm actually going to put down my small, tiny pitchfork and raise a small shield instead. Basically to say that overall, I found Emilia Perez enjoyable. And generally, I found it to be well made. In the artistic department, in the entertainment value, in the cinematography. I thought the cinematography was overall strong, unique in some moments, and especially the music, while I didn't expect it, I sort of had a hint that it was a musical based on a bit of word of mouth. But honestly, I was kind of swept up by the music a little bit. I thought it was very fun, not too serious, and it really gave me a sensation of Disney-like charm. And it almost made me feel that I was transported back to watching like Mulan for the first time. I thought it was very fun. Like, yeah, the lyrics aren't the most magnificent thing you've ever seen. But generally, I thought the moments in the musical numbers had a lot of surprising and playful moments in the musical sequences themselves, such as like the doctor scene. Like, I didn't expect the doctor to just start singing all of a sudden. And then when they started singing about, lady bits and genitalia, I thought that was hilarious. And especially with when Zoe Saldana is singing in the dining area, and then she's like dancing around. Like, I thought that was a great musical number as well. Very fun, very lighthearted. And so I thought Zoe Saldana generally killed the performance. I think definitely deserving of the Oscar that she is nominated for. A lot of people criticize it with talk singing, and basically where you speak regularly with very little emphasis on melody, kind of something more classical like Wicked and that kind of thing. But I thought that was a stylistic choice because I've seen a lot of other musicals that do that similar kind of rhythm. And for me, didn't detract me from the experience, but it might not be for you. I can't say that it's, poor or good quality choice to make. I think it's just something that the director chose to do stylistically, and that's what it was. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. It's just based on your taste and preference, I think. Generally, like I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of musicals, but I appreciate the songs because they served narrative function rather than just reiterating previous scenes or within that same scene, like I mentioned in Joker 2. I will give some common criticism to the film. So many critics and reviewers argue that the film suggests that we should basically forgive or praise Emilia simply because she transitioned and she's now being a good person in her current life. But I disagree with this quite heavily. I don't think the film is saying to praise her entirely. The film doesn't decide for you, but you have to remember, from the lens of most of the characters, except from Zoe Saldana's character, they all don't know that Emilia Perez is the previous crime lord in the story. So a lot of this treatment that you feel that she should be getting, that is not being given to her when she is a woman, is completely accurate to the reflection of how she's perceived in the story based on her actions. Us as an audience member, we recognize that, she's probably made terrible decisions that caused many people to have a great deal of misfortune, tons of violence and horrific acts as a crime lord, whether that's directly by Emilia's hand or not. But obviously her hands are covered in blood and soaked by all the victims that she's come across and created over the years. And, I think it's totally fair for someone in her position to start a new life. I think that's kind of relatable in the sense that, some people make mistakes. People make regrettable mistakes, and they want to do things to kind of get redemption and sort of make up for the things that they've done in their past by doing kind things in the future. I don't think that's a problem in the film. I think that's kind of just relatable to the human condition. I don't believe the film asks for blind forgiveness. I think it essentially just explores the consequences of past actions, and essentially of having a character try to get back the good things of their life and then simply try to avoid having the bad return into her life. I think the transition is not meant to remedy the situation in her life. I think it's just a means of escape, but it obviously doesn't erase the past actions that she's taken as a crime lord. So I think it's kind of unfair to judge the characters in the film for not treating her differently, because they don't know the previous life as the audience does. I think a big note as well is the makeup and transformation of her transitioning were amazing. I actually didn't know the actress at the time until after I watched the film, so I didn't know which way was the makeup and which was the other way. So I was very surprised. I thought they did an excellent job, probably as good as something as the Penguin in the Batman and also the TV series. I really felt it was realistic and super well done. Generally with the themes and the character development, I thought, Emilia starts to attempt a new life running a nonprofit, helping women. I thought that was a great way to simply contrast the actions of her being a crime lord in her previous life. I thought that was, something that a person would write as a polar opposite in storytelling. You usually try to contrast with a very different perspective, and I thought this was a standard way to do it. Definitely made sense for me. Obviously the main conflict is that she wants her children back, but she doesn't want to carry the burdens of her past at the same time, so she kind of wants her cake and eat it too. I do think the film does demonstrate clearly that she cannot selectively reclaim only the good parts of her past life without facing the consequences. And not only that, she kind of goes too far, and basically her actions lead to her eventual downfall, showing that, redemption is not simply about starting over, but facing responsibility, right? So she's kind of paying for her sins when she does come across the ending of the film. I do think there's a bit of dynamic storytelling with when she ends up getting in touch with her kids and her ex-wife, and they start living together under the assumption that she is the aunt. Some people alluded it to, Mrs. Doubtfire, sort of, and I think there's a little bit of that maybe, which is fine because I think it's a very unique film and other movies don't really do that kind of thing. I really like the scene in the bedroom where, she's taking care of one of her kids, and the child says that, "Oh, you smell like Dad." And then, it gets really emotional for her. I think things like that are really interesting because it makes you think that she's going to get found out somehow. And you know it's going to come if you've seen plenty of movies like this. You just don't know how it's going to come. And I think the way they build it up and kind of tease you throughout is pretty interesting. And she always gets brushes of her old life throughout the film, which I thought was pretty decently done. And yeah, I think the dynamic between the ex-wife, like trying to be very sisterly, but then also trying to take ownership and try to, correct the behavior and, kind of mom police her ex-wife as an aunt, but also trying not to be careful to overstep her boundaries. I thought was pretty complex and decently done. One thing I want to mention as well about performances, I thought the cast was generally, well done. Like nothing really bothered me. I thought Zoe was probably the best one of them all. And Selena I thought was also enjoyable as well, very entertaining and fun. I thought the way she had her, slow-mo sequences and certain acting choices she made, whether that was from her mind or from the director or from the script, it doesn't really matter. I think it really worked for how she was playing it. I think criticism of her accent, her Spanish accent, is really misplaced, because if you watch the movie, her character is American raised and not meant to be fluent, so she should not have a fluent Spanish accent like all the other characters. And I really found it to be weird that the vast majority of people criticizing her accent are not just Spanish people, but white people who don't speak any Spanish whatsoever. Me as a white person, I'm not gonna criticize anyone's accent when I don't know how to speak another language to any degree that I could be in a film. So my basic knowledge of characterization and storytelling, like that kind of accent, if it's not the same as the others, I think it kind of fits. Obviously, when you're talking about different cultures and different languages, even within different areas of the same language or different cultures, you can have different variants in the dialect and different tones. And I don't know that for speaking Spanish, but there definitely could be that aspect as well. Maybe someone who's Spanish can confirm this or not with me in the comments below. But yeah, I think generally the main criticism I have about the film is the ending, the climax essentially, where Emilia is in a shootout and basically confesses under turmoil conditions. And I thought that was generally very powerful, but I think they fumbled a little bit and sort of deflated by the end of the film. And I think there's moments that weren't fully utilized to really hit home the emotional impact of what was happening. I did feel the emotion when she was confessing, and Selena's character was finding out that she was, her ex-husband, who's actually not dead. And just having that moment of realization, I thought was very powerful for the film. I think that was supposed to be the crescendo of the whole story. However, I think the film's resolution weakens its impact by shifting away from the character's emotions. So if you notice through the ending, there's a lot of scenes that happen where they don't show the emotional state of the characters as the moments are passing by, and a lot happens really quickly in a short amount of time. So for example, Emilia gets attacked, beat up a little bit, and then thrown into the back of a car. You don't get to see her after that point, and you don't really get a moment of I guess you could say desperation. You don't get a sense of struggle. I wish there was more moments where you got to see the characters' expressions as they were going through each phase, just to slow down a little bit, or to give more tension and let us know how the characters are feeling, so that you could see them transition through these fast scenes. I think a lot of it is lost, and it sort of makes the ending feel a bit weak and less impactful than if they just ended it sooner than dragging it on to like the car chase, and then Selena basically causing the car accident to happen, which I think was fine to do. I just think it could have been done in a way that actually felt more resounding and more of an impactful ending. I think the final shot that we see of Emilia being praised in a sense of her charitable work, I think is understandable. I don't think the film is saying that she should be praised for her entire life. I think because in her current version of her life as a woman, she has done a lot of stuff in a short amount of time to kind of combat the evil in the world that she has inherently caused or indirectly caused. but the people that are supporting her don't know that, right? So I think that makes it a bit gray, and I think that is the interesting question that it's posing at the end of the film. It's not saying, oh, you become trans, erase everything from the previous life, and you can be a good person. If we look at people like Caitlyn Jenner, for example, that is not the case at all. There are a ton of people who are trans that are awful people. It's just the same with people that are not trans. They're just humans. They're just people in general. There's no reason to sweep under the rug anything terrible that someone's done based on their gender identity or choices with their own bodies. I think the reason why I feel so strongly to defend the film is because there is such a immense energy of negativity towards this film, when I think I've seen much worse films this year, especially in Joker 2, for example. I think it's kind of ridiculous how unsalvageable this film is to a lot of people, when I think it's very fun. It's not a very serious film. I think it tackles some serious issues here and there, but I don't think overall it should be taken as like an attack or as a political film. I think the fact that the Oscars have chosen to nominate it in such a vast and huge amount, I think that is the political aspect of it. I don't think it's the fault of the people who are involved with making this film. I think it could be nominated for certain aspects in the Oscars, which it currently has been, like for best song, maybe for for makeup and that sort of thing. Obviously for Zoe Saldana's performance, I thought was great. I don't believe that this film is a Best Picture nomination worthy. It just doesn't make sense to me when I compare it to the other films that I've seen, like The Substance, for example. Basically, for me, when you put something in the Best Picture category, you're basically saying that the fundamental storytelling of the movie is flawless, and you're basically comparing perfection with perfection, and you're really getting into the nitty-gritty nuance of the storytelling, the extra meaning, any sort of subtlety in the cinematography, in the character dialogue, and the subtext. But because of how clumsy the ending feels to me, it feels like very amateur for them to have filmed it that way and had gone to print and production, essentially. I think despite the politics, I do recognize the industry recognition to a degree, but just not the amount that it has been given. Like Dune 2, for example, could have easily had way more acknowledgement. Unfortunately, I understand that, the Oscars don't matter to a lot of people, and I find them to be silly and a bit of common fun, but at the same time, unfortunately, they do matter in the world because, lives are changed from these awards being given out. Opportunities are given to people that win. Movies are greenlit. Movies are rejected or denied based on what wins Oscars, right? Unfortunately, that's just how it works, even though they are very political and, to an average person, they don't matter, but they do affect the landscape of Hollywood. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. That's why I do get upset when certain things are recognized in a certain way and others are not, because it's basically I'm just trying to have good stories get nominated and get the attention they deserve, because these things take a lot of effort and it's really difficult to write stories. You can try it yourself. I highly will tell you it's not easy. But it is greatly rewarding, so recommend you try it if not. One thing I will say as well, some elements of the film are pretentious for sure, but to be fair, a lot of films, especially ones that are nominated for awards, are going to be a bit pretentious in some aspects, because this is just a common thing when you have a strong directorial vision. And I think if you don't have a little bit of pretentious energy in your film or certain moments, I think maybe you don't have a strong opinion on something. I think Strange Darling, for example, is a film I thought was overly pretentious in certain aspects, even though generally I thought it was an interesting film. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I want to kind of defend this because I thought the overwhelming negativity just didn't make sense to me. Is this a awful movie worth nothing in its creation, worth no attention. Nothing can be gained from this. Of course not. This has fun moments. This has aspects that are redeemable, and this has reasons to see it for sure, and reasons to study it, of course, as well. However, this is not up to snuff for a Best Picture nomination. I haven't seen every single film that's nominated, but I have seen a handful of them, and I am not impressed by Emilia Perez at that Best Picture quality. I want to finish this off by telling you guys about the plot, what I find the plot to be, and what the story is. So the plot to me is a crime lord that blackmails a lawyer to help her become a woman. They have a reunion and become intertwined in new circumstances. Now, the story to me is a new woman attempts to get the precious things she left behind as a man. However, the cost is the price of her life. And so I thought that was a really interesting way to perceive the film. I think that's the real message behind it. I don't think it's telling you to think any way about Emilia Perez as a person. Obviously, she's very complicated and gray, and I think it's fair if you lean one way or the other about her. But yeah, I think give films a chance. Don't worry about the political aspects that people are spit talking about it. Just, I think, turn the other cheek. Watch the films. Make your own opinions. That's what I've always tried to do myself. And just because a movie is not amazing, just because a movie is terrible, there are many things you can dissect and gain from as an individual, whether or not you care about telling stories. I think things always have value to somebody. I'd love to hear you guys' perspectives in the comment section. Maybe someone, like I mentioned, who is Spanish can tell me maybe Selena Gomez was hitting a dialect that was from a different part of Mexico or something like that, or this is how American raised Spanish accents sound. But anyway, I will talk about Wicked next for a little bit in the next video. But yeah, take care of each other, be kind out there, and have a great rest of the night. Thanks.